Scorpio, appointed in the center of the galaxy. Update your dogma with the cat, update your science with the fallacies. There's a sizable castle in your sky. I'm gonna go there when I die. We'll see you there.
Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. A little clip from Screens, the band, my old band. That was after I had quit, couldn't play at clubs for a while. But thanks to them, hopefully sharing that little clip from YouTube here on YouTube doesn't make this invisible to you. If anyone's here live, please write something in the chat so I know that that's working. Yeah, I mean, hey, YouTube, I wrote the fucking song. Anyway, Sagittarius and Scorpio are pointed at the center of the galaxy. Upgrade your dogma to a cat. Update your science with new fallacies. There's a saxophone castle in the sky. Have a little faith. I'm gonna go there when I die. It's like, you know, my religion, I guess. Let me show you why I chose to start with that song. Thanks to the great Stellarium Astronomy software here, we can see that Mercury is currently traveling with the center of the galaxy. The stinger of the Scorpion, let's just take a few things away here to make it a little easier to see. And I'll zoom out a bit. The stinger of the Scorpion and the arrow of the Archer, and the foot of Ophiuchus, the great serpent tender, the healer, they triangulate Sagittarius, a star, as the astronomers call this point. That is the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And importantly, because Mercury currently has southern latitude, meaning south of the ecliptic, because Mercury's south node is in Scorpio, not only at these degrees of the zodiac, the sun's path, the ecliptic, that the galactic center projects to, is Mercury traveling through that space currently, but also Mercury, because he has south latitude, is getting closer than other planets would. Like many planets go up here, north of the ecliptic, when in this zone of the zodiac. The moon, sometimes, and we're in them, when the moon can go very out of bounds south, she can actually pass over the galactic center. Now, I should say that that's like a radio telescope, thanks Australia, measurement of the galactic center, the center of our galaxy. But very importantly, there's something we can very clearly see with the naked eye when we're away from the bright city lights, and it's where the galactic plane and the ecliptic cross. There's two of those spaces, and one is here at this gate, this galactic cross, right? And that's the galactic bulge, as the astronomers call it, this like amazing mass at the center of the Milky Way of just billions of stars, right? It's like a lot to process, and maybe some of the challenges of Mercury in Sagittarius, if indeed that's a challenging thing at all. So I want to speak about that a little bit, and then I want to show a few chart examples, and we're going to get into some harmonics in these chart examples. I don't have much time here. Clients start in less than 30 minutes. So we're going to go kind of quick, but that's all right. That's how Mercury rolls, you know? Let me just... Thanks to Screens, the band, once again. I did put a link to this particular version of Saxophone Castles that was recorded October 26, 2013 in the descriptions here in this video. Again, YouTube, if you have problems with me playing that song, I wrote it, all right? Leave me alone. So, and look, the song says Sagittarius and Scorpio are pointed to the center of the galaxy. Upgrade your dogma to a cat. Update your science with new fallacies. You know, Sagittarius can get pretty religious and dogmatic if we are not careful. Sagittarius is about seeking truth, right? It is only wounded if we believe we found it and we know it. Run away from the people who believe they do. We might not even come from the Milky Way galaxy. Look into the research by, who was it? Boston College and University of Virginia, I think, into the super red giants that show us that perhaps our solar system hails not from the Milky Way, but rather from what was once believed to be a Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, but we realize is actually huge and old and is kind of currently being assimilated into the Milky Way. And it's amazing that two galaxies can quote unquote collide without stars hitting each other, right? Because there's so much more space than there is stuff. But space is stuff too, and here's to that. All right, friends, well, let's journey through space together. Hop on board. What about Mercury and Sagittarius? Now, if I go to the medieval scorecard here, essential dignities, we're going to see Mercury like quite negative and peregrine. He is not only, he's in detriment, it says, right? Now, that word detriment, it is not old. And we actually can't find, from my understanding, Hellenistic astrologers talking about problems with planets in their opposite sign. What do I mean by that, right? So Mercury is said to rule Gemini. That's a very modern term. The old term is Mercury is the domicile lord of Gemini. Like, that's his house. It's the landlord there. So when planets are in Gemini, like, Mercury's got to receive them, right? They're staying in his Airbnb. If the sink breaks, he has to fix it. And, you know, he might try to mess with the security deposit or whatever, right? But it's like his responsibility to deal with that, or hopefully, as a good host, Mercury's going to receive who's ever traveling through Gemini. Sagittarius all the way on the opposite side of the world. So the medieval term for this is exile. Does this mean Mercury doesn't work? Well, we're going to look at some chart examples that will clearly show us how ridiculous some kind of statement like that would be of Mercury, if Mercury is indeed consciousness, expression, thought, mentality. Voice is working quite well in Sagittarius. For a few, I'm going to, while I'm speaking, go to astroseek.com, where we can look at different celebrity charts, and I'll show you what I did this morning in like an advanced celebrity search engine there. Let me put this on the screen for you. Buttons. Let's just share the whole thing. Yeah, here you can like go to this advanced astro search. Thanks to Peter, astroseek.com is amazing. And I can do things like just ask this to show me folks who have Mercury in Sagittarius. And when I search by popularities, I get a bunch of actors and actresses, right? Bill Pullman, Jude Law, Goldie Hawn, Val Kilmer, Ed Harris, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ben Stiller, John Voight, Diane Keaton. I'm reading the names that no. Jared Leto, Jeff Bridges, Ray Liotta, Woody Allen. Anyway, Danny DeVito, Sally Field, right? Some like great comedians, actors, otherwise. Well, that would make sense because they've got Mercury, Kirk Douglas, Frank Sinatra. You think Mercury worked for Frank? Yeah. Loretta Young. Anyway, you know, for actors, actresses, it's like Mercury's like far from home. Like, let's use another's voice. Let's take on another role. I'm going to get back to that concept. I then this morning when I was playing with this machine earlier, I sorted by, I added profession, occupation, physicist, right? So if, didn't I? Physicists. if Mercury doesn't work in Sagittarius, then people who can do physics well, like Isaac fucking Newton, shouldn't have Mercury in Sagittarius. Yes, we're going to look at Newton's chart because I want to get into a harmonic analysis here. But let me just say for now, here's another interesting one that came up. Oh, and it's C.S. Lewis's birthday. Wonderful. When I looked for theologians, which I figured might have Mercury in Sagittarius, given the whole dogma scene, C.S. Lewis came up. I didn't know that he was a theologian. It says right there. I know C.S. Lewis as the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. Now, this is an untimed chart. So they just use a 0 Aries wheel. But Mercury was in Sagittarius for the entire day. And check that out. It's a Mercury synodic return today here on C.S. Lewis's birthday. Happy 125th birthday, C.S. Lewis. Turns out that that's alive in the Mercury synodic cycle because look, Sun at the same degree where Sun is today and Mercury at the same degree where Mercury is today. So a synodic return for C.S. Lewis. All right, so here's a couple examples. Another one that showed up is Tom Waits. So I have all these charts on the screen. Maybe let's start with Isaac Newton. Now, this idea of detriment, right, or exile, to use the medieval term, when a planet is like so far away from its home, right? Mercury is said to rule Gemini, and so is so far away in Sagittarius. I want to show you something from a heliocentric model that's a really wonderful support for this. I'll be sharing this amongst many other examples of kind of modern astronomical findings that help us see that the ancient code of astrology is often confirmed by the findings of modern astronomy. So let me show you its solar system scope, this heliocentric model. Mercury's very elliptical or eccentric orbital path. All right. Mercury's actually closest to the sun when in tropical Gemini and furthest away when in tropical Sagittarius. Now, when I go to today, and Mercury is in tropical Sagittarius today, like that might seem strange. Like that's obviously not Mercury's far point in the ellipse. But this has so much to do, with Earth's point of view. The tropical zodiac is the zodiac of Earth. So if we could get Mercury conjunct the sun in Sagittarius, when Mercury is either close to Earth, retrograde conjunct sun, or far from Earth, direct Mercury conjunct sun, we would see Mercury aligning to this point. AstroGold actually will allow me, let me get the transit chart back up here, to look at the apsides information for the planets now. And so you'll see things like, well, they're only showing us the geocentrics. So yeah, I've just kind of opened up a rabbit hole I don't have time to explore. But let me just say this, that like Mercury is closest to the sun and Earth, Gemini, and furthest from the sun and Earth, Sagittarius. And there's that kind of interesting thing about Mercury said to rule or be at home in the sign of Gemini and said to be in exile or far away in Sagittarius. Now, does this mean weak Mercury? Isaac fucking Newton. Case closed, right? Did Newton have a weak Mercury? There's other examples I love to use when speaking about planets in so-called detriment and showing that that does not mean that they are weak. Muhammad Ali had Mars in Taurus. The GOAT, the greatest boxer of all time. Do you think a pugilist has no access to their Mars or any of the other ridiculous statements that you will hear described in this kind of weak essence of a planet? Yeah, pugilists have access to Mars. Muhammad Ali certainly did. However, very importantly, I would suggest that Muhammad Ali's great fight was fighting the draft and choosing to not go fight in Vietnam. Muhammad Ali said, Charlie's not my enemy, like I'm not going, right? For this, he was jailed for a short time. He was fined, and maybe most importantly, he was not allowed to fight for 3 years in his prime. because he fought the good fight, you see? So counterculture. Bob Marley, Venus and Aries. You think Bob Marley can't Venus? Dude, he's beautiful. Like straight up. And writes beautiful music, sings beautifully. But what did he sing about? Some about love, but mostly about revolution. Bob Marley, card-carrying Aquarius sun. But, you know, revolution is obviously, by very definition, counterculture. Bob Marley also had a pretty interesting Venus relationship situation. 5 children with his wife Rita, 7 children with 7 other women. Look into that if you'd like. And, you know, so there's something different. I mean, when you have Venus in Libra, it's like Venus is cast to play a role that she's typecast. She's very comfortable there, right? Like Libra is very Venusian. Taurus. Venus in Aries, it's like you cast this being to play a role that's kind of opposite to her nature. In some regards, you could say it's going to work better maybe for a comedy than a drama. You know, so Mercury in Sagittarius, far from Gemini. We think of Sagittarius as like big picture, the long journey, Jupiterian. And Mercury, much more interested in the data, the thoughts, the thinks, right? Virgo, Gemini, right? And so Sagittarius, it's like, you look just look at Mercury at the galactic center, right? Like, how do we deal with this much information, right? It's like all of these stars. I'm going to show this to you again here, right? Mercury's just in this massive collection of hundreds of billions of stars. It's the center of the galaxy. Like, it's a lot to process. Now, importantly, if we looked at Mercury in Sagittarius a couple thousand years ago, that would not be in the galactic center. So I'm not going to say like that is the expression or the definition or the reason behind Mercury's so-called exile in Sagittarius. But I will say, like, it's very interesting in our day, and it allows for some contemplation. Mercury, of course, is not visible where I am right now because the sun's up. But by the way, Mercury is now far enough from the sun today on November 29th, 2023, that Mercury, clouds allowing, is visible as an evening star. Mercury's southern latitude actually fights mercurial visibility from the northern hemisphere point of view, but benefits those in the southern hemisphere who are trying to get a glimpse of the trickster and have a look. Let me show you sunset 38 degrees south of the equator today. I'm living 38 degrees north, and there's Mercury, like much more visible. No, you're probably not going to see any Milky Way because Mercury is still so close to the sun that the sun's pretty close to the horizon before Mercury sets, yeah? But Mercury is in that space, so feel into it. In that space, that what is where, let me go to right now here in the wonderful Stellarium astronomy software, and we'll dim the light. The center of the galaxy, where the stinger of the scorpion, the arrow of the archer, and the foot of the healer, Ophiuchus, triangulate. I think the ancients knew a little something more than we did. Well, Sagittarius A star, Milky Way's galactic center, is radio telescope measured. It's here. But look, you can see, and especially before the bright city lights, we could see all of this, you know, unless the sun's in the sky or a bright moon. So it's not like we didn't understand this important river of stars. By the way, I believe this is like the old burnt road via Combusta. I believe that should be precessed for those of you who know what that is. But I want to get into these chart examples and just honor time. This is kind of Mercury and Sagittarius, right? I'm just like going for it and taking the long journey. Well, did Isaac Newton? So Isaac Newton, one of the greatest mathematicians ever, you know, honored in this way. Look at Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury square Saturn, right? Now, pardon my language, but Isaac Newton was also known to be kind of a great asshole. And I wonder if some of that's in it. We are not certainly sure about Isaac Newton's birth time, by the way, but interesting to think about Scorpio rising maybe in that regard. With Capricorn in the third, I might really look to this Pisces Saturn to describe speech, actually. So Mercury, kind of a general CEO for thought, thinks, communication, etc. But we also want to honor the natal chart. And to do that, we probably want to be able to speak with the person and have some more, surety, is that a word? In their birth time. And we don't with Isaac Newton. So I'm not going to spend too much time there. I will say I'm going to explore, if time allows, this distance between Mercury and Jupiter. Why? Because Mercury is said to be in Jupiter's home when traveling through Sagittarius. And some would say, if indeed the medieval scorecard has any truth to suggest, and like Mercury's in a way weakened in Sagittarius, well, we could see other strengths and so-called essential dignities, like Isaac Newton born during Mercury's hour. Maybe, we're not sure of his birth time, but that Mercury was in his own terms or Egyptian bounds here. And especially Mercury in Sagittarius with strong Jupiter. Why strong Jupiter? Because Jupiter's at home in Pisces, right? And Jupiter actually for Newton is also in his own face or decan and also in his own bounds or terms. So super strong Jupiter, which is not surprising. You know, Isaac Newton spent as much time working on the Bible and other scriptures as he did on mathematics and physics. He wasn't satisfied with any of what was known or said, right? Like he was not into, the promoted dogma, maybe created his own. Newton was far too much a mystic, by the way, to be considered Newtonian in the parlance of our day. Right? He was an alchemist. He translated the Emerald Tablets of Hermes. He again worked on the Bible and prophecy and all of this wonderful stuff. He literally was, into alchemy. Probably was the head of a very interesting secret society. Like much is not taught about Isaac Newton in our schools, where we just talk about a falling apple and the invention of gravity, right? But look into Isaac Newton and his quest for the light. All right, so Mercury in Sagittarius probably strengthened because Jupiter's in Pisces if we want to play with these ancient rules. And I just resist the idea that Mars in Taurus is weak and Mercury in Sagittarius is weak. I see them as counterculture, breaking out of the mold, doing something different. My current obsession with harmonic astrology has me interested in things like, what's Mercury's aspect to Newton's midheaven? Well, if we don't have a good birth time, I'm not going to really do that. But what about Mercury and Jupiter, right? So let's do that. 21 degrees for Mercury, 14 for Jupiter. So they're not square. They're square minus 5 degrees. Did I do that right? So, 21 to get to 14. It's 83 degrees away. 83 degrees in 10 arc minutes. 10 arc minutes is 0.16 of a degree. So we're talking about 83.167 degrees of arc between this Mercury and Jupiter, if I did my math right. And the question is, what harmonic is that? This is the maths. Dividing that by 360, inverting it, and I get this number, 4.33. Well, that's 4 1/3. So if I multiply that by 3, we see this, 13. In other words, Mercury and Jupiter here are separated by 3/13 of the zodiac, a 13th of the zodiac being about 27.7 degrees, and 3 of those being about 83. We can confirm this by looking at a 13th harmonic chart of Newton's expression. Let's see about that. We should see Jupiter and Mercury conjunct. Yes, we do. And in 13th harmonic Virgo, which intrigues me, and in the 10th, maybe. Most harmonic astrologers aren't going to use signs and houses, but either way, 13, we can see 13 strong, depending on birth time, Moon, Mars, Sun, Pluto, Venus near the node, certainly Moon node, like Saturn, Uranus. It's an intriguing harmonic chart. What is 13? Well, what's fun for me is before I was tripping on Sagittarius Mercury and looking for Sagittarius Mercury charts this morning, I was actually in David Hamlin's The Spirit of Numbers and looking specifically at the 13th harmonic. just chapter 11. And he's just looking at famous people that have a lot of 13s in their chart. So he's Catherine the Great, Amelia Earhart, Peter Sellers, who he says, like, Peter Sellers took on so many other roles of other people. Like, he was often said, people near him said he didn't even know who he was. Truman Capote, Herman Hesse, Janis Joplin, Roberta Cowell, who interestingly was Robert Cowell, the first person, at least in England, and David Hamlin suggested maybe therefore in the world, but he's not sure, to undergo a sex change. Che, 13s, right? So basically he feels, and many have seen 13 as like a dissatisfaction with the structures of the world, which is very 12, like the very natural structure. Some people like Charles Addy say, well, the 13 is the one amongst the 12. That's 12. That's not 13, right? That's like the 13 is the center of the thing. This is what like the 13 sign astrologers like are completely missing. It's like just a geometrical ignorance, pardon me, and a harmonic, like a musical ignorance. Like this is, we used to learn all these things together, and we should, by the way, to understand that 13 is the one, it's the inside surrounded by the 12, or it's the sun traveling through the 12 apostles, the 12 signs, the 12 tribes, right? So when you start talking 13th harmonic, it's not that. Now there's 13 divisions, not 12. The 13 is no longer the one of the 12. It's like 13s. All right. Anyway, there's something about breaking out of the mold. It's dissatisfied with, the normal framework. And that's very much something that I would say works for Isaac Newton. And it's something in general that I would say about Mercury and Sagittarius. All right. Other examples. Let's look to C.S. Lewis. Again, we don't know the birth time. I cast 12 p.m. Usually I would cast this as a 0 Aries wheel and just not talk houses at all. And I'm seeing Mercury in Libra here. So I either have the wrong date. I have November 9th, and other things were telling me December 7th. You go find that online. You know what? I don't have time, so I'm going to do that later. I don't believe this is C.S. Lewis's birth chart. 1928. Yeah, we were just reading like 1898, December 7th. Let me just cast that. Yeah, that's not the one either. So, but by the way, it would be November 30th. I read it's his birthday. I think maybe this was the one. There's a Mercury in Sagittarius near, the cusp. Let's say that's right. We have a sextile between Mercury and Jupiter here. 59 degrees, a little bit less. I could get into that harmonic, but I don't even know if this is the right birth time, and I don't have time. So let's go to, I think, a wonderful example of Mercury and Sagittarius, Tom Waits. First of all, angular planets run the show. So Sagittarius rising, my eyes are like, where's Jupiter? And Jupiter in Aquarius in the second house, but whole sign third, with Venus, totally works as the steersman in Tom Waits's world. Because Aquarius, he's weird and huge. Jupiter and super Venusian and musical and the like. Look at Venus ruling this midheaven. Of course, in Libra, the Northern Hemisphere births typically pair a Libra midheaven with a Sagittarius ascendant. And there's an interesting thing about the midheaven in the 11th whole sign, maybe encouraging working in casts and crews and the like. Tom Waits, if you don't know, and you should, is a brilliant musician, writer, but very avant-garde, really pushed the boundaries. Also has been an actor in some really cool things. But Mercury rising, as much as like I feel this Venus-sided, applying Venus to an Aquarius, Jupiter does a great job of describing like the steersman for Tom Waits's chart. He's incredibly mercurial, a shapeshifter, has had different like lives as a musician over time, and very eccentric and mercurial in that way, you know? Tom Waite's born in the northern hemisphere here in California, so this 8.5 degrees separation from Mercury, just coming out of combustion with the sun, no way visible. But in the southern hemisphere, that actually might be a visible evening star, Mercury. Anyway, where is Jupiter? He's in Aquarius. Let's just really quickly look at this distance between Mercury and Jupiter. Or what about Mercury in the midheaven? Like Mercury's doing much of professional visibility for Tom Waits. I'm interested in Mars at the top of his chart. I'm interested in Neptune culminating with the node in the 10th house. But what about this aspect? Well, Mercury in the midheaven there's 73 degrees. It's a quintile. I mean, it's not exact, but it's a quintile. And we should see these fives in Tom Waits' world. He's a very creative being. I mean, amazingly so. Well, what about Mercury, Jupiter? Right? I like using harmonics in dispositorship investigation. So Mercury to Jupiter here, I mean, the signs of Sag in Aquarius are sextile, but you know, this isn't sextile. This is more like 40. In fact, it's more like 37 and a half. Or 25 arc minutes divided by 60 minutes in degree. I think it's 0.41 plus 37 if I'm doing my math right. Divide the wheel by that, and we get this 9.62. Well, it's about 9 6/10 or 9 3/5. What happens if I multiply by 5? 548. I might have to get back to this one. Yeah, I had done this earlier and I had seen something that seemed to completely resonate. Oh, it was, you know what I got to was the 77th harmonic. Just playing with the calculator in the garage earlier. Let's see if that's true. It is. All right. So something here is all wrong. Or let's do this again. 360 divided by 37.4, I think it was. What happens if I multiply that by 11? No, by 7. Nah, I don't know how I do. I'm messing up the math right now. I just don't have time to calculate it well. But I had earlier, and here it is. 77th harmonic, right? Which actually, as I'm just kind of learning harmonics and exploring right now, I think totally works. Because what would we do with 77? Well, 7 out there, 11 maybe more out there. I think less. 7, and it's, for me, it's the access to the miracles, the world behind the world. And the 11s, I call it bringing the magic to the muggles. That's a rude way to say it. But I look at the 7s of like bringing the elixir from the weird world to, you know, the standard world. Actually, I said the real world. Let's say the weird world to the real world, or let's say like, you know, the wavy world to the square world. And Tom Waits is totally designed to do that, and designed to do that through the mercurial essence and the Aquarian out of the box amazement. So I love the idea of Mercury, Venus, Jupiter huddled together in the 77th harmonic for Tom Waits. I actually think it says a lot as a testament for how I'm coming to know 7 and 11. But of course, I want to confirm my astrology. It's hard to have a clean experiment as a scientist. Yeah, no. All right, there's a little bit about Mercury in Sagittarius. Be careful when people tell you something's good or bad or weak or strong. I think words like out of the box, different, counterculture are much better expressions for planets in so-called exile or fall. See you in space, y'all. Hey, if you like the video, find me at GeminiBrett.com. Focus